to OneWorld's education agenda. Our agenda item this evening is preparing students for a successful college and life experience. We have in the studio with us this evening students from several New Haven high schools, and we also have professors from Southern Connecticut State University and from University of New Haven. With me this evening is Mark Parmeri, the president of OneWorld Board Education Committee, and we're here to talk with these students and these professors about how do we prepare our students for success in college and in life. And we want to first tell you who the professors are, and we also have 3 college students who are going to share their experience with the high school students. And this is our college high school forum. Welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for being here. And Dr. Carr, we are going to start with you. Just tell us who you are and where you work, what you teach.
I am Professor Audrey Kerr. I teach at Southern Connecticut State University. I'm in the English department, and I teach English literature with a specialization in African American lit.
Okay, and Professor Carr is also a published author. She has a wonderful book called The Paperback Principle. Sandra?
I'm Sandy Bulmer. I'm the Dean for the School of Health and Human Services at Southern Connecticut State University. And thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm delighted you're here. Matt?
My name is Matthew Engeron, and I am the physics department chair. I'm a professor there, and it's a pleasure to be here, so thank you for the invitation as well.
You're welcome. Maria?
And I'm Maria Isabel Carnasciali. I'm a professor of mechanical engineering at the University of New Haven, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Now, our students. Go ahead, Julio. Tell us who you are.
I'm Julio. I graduated from Southern with a degree in bio, and I work as a microbiologist now.
Okay, and I'm delighted you're here. Apple.
My name is Apple. I'm in my last week of college, and I work at the Yale Peabody Museum.
Okay, and tell us what you're majoring in.
Physics.
Okay, Susie.
My name is Susie, and I'm a sophomore at Yale University, majoring in political science with a focus on genocide and ethnically motivated violence.
And Susie graduated from West Haven High School, and she has been with us now for about 5 years. And so when the high school students speak, they will tell you who they are. And they're here this evening to get some first-hand information about how to successfully prepare for a wonderful college career, but also for success in life.
I'm a retired school administrator who has been involved with social educational issues for a whole career, and thoroughly have enjoyed the last couple of years with interaction with the students that are here and the universities. This is a very critical period of time for our students, and we hope this program will in fact give you some real pertinent information as to how 1 or 2 of those things that are bothering you might be resolved. Thank you.
I'll tell you briefly that OneWorld Progressive Institute is a community volunteer organization. We started these programs in 1996. I started them. This program brings us to 21 years, 6 months, and 15 days of doing these programs. We started them in June of 1996. Gerald Parks was the person who started them with me. We have since lost him in 2012. But he has been a bedrock, and he helped me tremendously in the first 15 years or so to host programs. And when I couldn't be here, he was here always and in the community. And we regret that he has transitioned 5 years ago, and we miss him greatly. Mark and his wife Dee have been, in the last 7 years, I couldn't have continued these programs without Mark and Dee, both for their financial resources and their physical resources and their expertise, but Mark being there with me. And Antoinette Brim, Enola Aird, Lizette McGowan, Lisa Rail, and Andrew Grant Thomas are the people who you don't see in front of the camera so much, but they are the backbone or help to keep me up and keep me going to do these programs. We are going to start with a question by Marissa, and this question is one that many high school students ask. Marissa, go ahead and ask your question.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Marissa Niclario. I am a senior at the Sound School in New Haven. My question is, what advice would you give your former high school selves in regards to the college application process?
I would say start early. I know that like November and December are a really stressful time for everyone, and I think it's because you're walking into senior year, you're getting senioritis, but I would say the earlier you can start, like the end of August or as early as, or like early September would be a good time. If you can knock out like one application, like even once a month, that's a really good start, so you're not in such a rush when it comes time.
Susie?
Yeah, in talking about college applications, I think the best advice I got was from a guidance counselor in my high school's guidance department at West Haven High School, and it's specifically regarding the personal essays. So the best advice I ever received was to write the essays as if someone were to find it face down in a hallway without a name on it, they could turn it over, read it, and then realize it was from you. And I think that advice goes beyond just getting into a good school. I think that advice goes it sort of is a good way to put yourself in an application and make sure that you're really putting out something that you're proud of and something that's personal to you.
I'd like to point out that although yes, it's important to start early and just do your best to work at it, even each day just a little bit, but for your personal essays, I think it's beneficial to have someone look over your essay and just make sure if it makes sense, if like the flow of the essay itself works, because you don't really know who's going to be reading your essay, so you kind of just have to make sure you get your point across, if that makes any sense. And yeah.
How important is the essay, professors?
It's quite important. I think one of the things students often do is they talk a great deal about what they want to get from the university. But the other thing that universities are looking for is this skill set that you're bringing to the university. And so one piece of it, and an very important piece of it, is what you feel you can offer to the school, and not just the reasons why you think they should want you to come as a student. So finding that balance in your essay can be incredibly important to an admissions officer.
With the chance of the essays, and I don't sit on undergraduate admissions, but with the essays, I guess one thing to think about is that you have an opportunity to tell people at the university something about yourself which is not reflected in grades or letters of recommendation, SAT scores. So you have an opportunity here to truly express yourself and your interest, and that's, you should take some time, I guess, to think about that.
I agree fully. I think that when you're looking at putting your application together, you have to use every piece of the application process to tell your story. And if someone has already provided some information and recommendation, try not to be redundant, but try to add with your essay something that's unique. And the whole thing is really a story. It's a story about you, and it's one opportunity to share that with all of the audiences that you're going to have read it.
The one implication to your, the other implication I see to your question is, what are the routines do you go through during that senior year? And one of the difficulties I find is that sometimes as a junior or even a sophomore, you need to become very familiar with the process and the materials. Because what happens is that if you decide, well, I can start it in September or October, your senior year, sometimes it's overwhelming the first time you open up something. And so one of the things we've heard many kids say to other kids, let's think about starting as sophomores. Let's understand that good writing doesn't happen on a particular essay come October 1 of my senior year. What are the kinds of things I ought to be looking at now? So I think that there are some routines that are good to say to your peers to begin practicing very early in your high school career.
Okay, to the students, what other questions do you have? Who has a burning question right now? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Dylan Ramerton, and I also go to the Sound School, and I'm a senior. And my question is for the students. What was your first day of college like?
The first day of college, I mean, it was pretty great. So, I mean, there's just new faces, new experiences, just all in that one day. I managed to step in a large pile of gum for some reason, but that's besides the point. I was just pretty overwhelmed by the large amounts of independence I had when just, stepping onto campus and just figuring out what it is that I needed to do. But, I think all of you guys will have that experience in the near future.
So that was your biggest challenge, figuring out what to do first?
Well, in the sense, yes. So there was a period where I didn't really know what I wanted to do exactly, but I knew that I just wanted to study science. But, what specifically I wanted to study, or like who would I approach and just ask these questions to. I didn't really know that right off the top of my head, but I, just talk to people, look around. There's resources in your university that can help you out for sure. But yeah.
Anything to add, Susie or Apple?
Well, my first day was a little nerve-wracking. I feel like I was excited, like really excited, because I get to meet all of these new people. But there were like logistical stuff that I was nervous about, like being in the wrong class, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, like not knowing what I'm doing. And the other thing is, because you're meeting all of these new people, you're walking in and you're like, holy crap, I don't know anybody. Like, how am I going to make friends? And I don't know anything about any of these people. Like, how do I initiate conversations? So I think it was like not nice, but it was an okay combination of being like super excited, but also really, really nervous.
Yeah, I think in direct relation to that, everyone is sort of like that on their first day of college, which is totally to your advantage on your first day. Just reflecting on mine, I did a pre-orientation program before starting my formal semester. It was a week-long sort of get to know you with other students. There was free pizza everywhere. Everyone was wearing brightly colored t-shirts. Someone was playing music. It was a lot of fun. It was really overwhelming. So I found myself in line for pizza when it hit me that I don't know anyone at all. So I tapped on the shoulder of the person in front of me and I said, I don't know anyone. And he said, neither do I. And he's one of my best friends. So if that's any consolation to you, in that sort of uncomfortable and an uneasy period, everyone else around you is feeling the exact same way. So in terms of advice, just sort of go for it and just chat with someone.
Thanks. Anyone else with go ahead.
Hi, my name's Alexis. I'm from New Haven Academy.
Okay.
I understand that networking is the most essential part of college experience and your future goals. So how can I network, or what can I do to network effectively and get my and communicate with other students and
So your question is, how can you network effectively?
Yes.
And communicate with other students?
and professors and wherever I go.
Start with the students in your class, really. Start small, and chances are you'll find someone with common interests in your classes. But also talk to your professors, visit them during their office hours, get a chance to know them. It's like, hi, could you possibly help me out? I have these questions about what I want to do, for an example. But there's also clubs and organizations that share similar interests that you have, so it's worth looking into that too.
I would add that networking is hard and it does take practice, and the earlier you start even taking little steps, the better it goes. If campus happens to have a career fair, take advantage the first time, walk around through it so that you get a sense of how things are and you're a little bit more comfortable. Then after that, then approach it that you're actually ready and going to use it. Whenever an organization has an opportunity to meet alums that come to campus or industry representatives, take advantage of that as well. But know that networking is something that we all work at, even when we're in situations like this. And being prepared to introduce yourself and have a little bit of a story of who you are goes a long way.
I find that homework is like a stone that hits many, many birds. And one is because when you go to office hours and you ask professors like how to help you with your homework, like it's a good conversation starter, because like it helps you guys kind of like bond together, and they're going to remember you as the student that came for help. And if you have a specific problem that you are trying to work through, it's also a good icebreaker with your fellow classmates, because you can always just say, hey, I was having a really hard time with this one, like how did you do it? And then you guys can work through it together. And that's also like a really good way to make friends. And you can always say, hey, we should probably get to, would you want to get together like once a week to work on homework? And it's really nice because you're making friends, you're talking to your professor, they know that you're the student that like does their homework and is consistently trying. So I just think that it's a really good way to do that.
I would like to add that your primary reason for being there is to get your education. And I think that your identity as a freshman is very important. And you also you are beginning to create a professional identity and educational identity. So the truth of it is, the more proficient you become at what it is you're there to do, the quality of your networking is going to be better. We've seen situations where kids will go ask for help and you find out that they haven't even tried yet A, B, or C. So the truth of it is, I think especially that first semester, focus in on becoming as proficient as you can be as that freshman year, and I think the quality of the networking will be enhanced by that as you move through school.
I have the questions here that came in from the students before, and from some students who are not here. What college courses should I take now while I'm in high school to have an easier transition and faster associate achievement? So,
I'd be happy to start with that one.
Sure.
As the Dean for the School of Health and Human Services, we have a lot of students who are trying to get into some of our health professional degree programs such as nursing. And I get many calls from students asking about what they should be doing in high school to be prepared for that curriculum. And it really is important to focus in high school on making sure that you're ready to do the hard work of college. The grades in high school are important, but more important is that you have been prepared to take those first college courses, and that you have the resilience and the study habits, and you have a foundation that you're able to draw upon when you take those courses. So really being thoughtful about the courses that you're taking and what you're getting out of each and every experience in high school is really the most important thing universally. You can start in many different levels once you get to college, but your preparation and how to study is difficult if you don't have that when you arrive at the front door.
Okay, Maria or Matt, do you have anything to add?
I agree completely with what was just said, although I guess to be a little bit more specific, I think even though as a physicist, this was discussed earlier, I think that the communication skills and the reading and writing comprehension skills are invaluable to any degree. It helps you with those studying habits. And so if you're looking at what to take in school, I would tell you, yes, take physics. But really, English and foreign languages, so you learn about language and how to read it, how to communicate it well and effectively. It, like I say, it is invaluable. I learned the hard way when I was an undergraduate. So it's very important.
Audrey, anything to add?
Well, putting on my advisor hat, I would say that some of the courses that are likely to transfer would include those honors English classes, language classes, and some math classes. So those are the areas where you're going to see coursework that actually might be able to translate, particularly in the CSU system. So if those are strengths that you have in high school, those may be some things that you can tick off of your intro to college list.
And I just want to say many students are afraid of math and science, and they avoid them taking honors classes in high school. And of course, if you don't take honors classes in high school, you're not likely to do well in the college level courses for those sciences. So it's important that, because you can get more support in high school by taking these courses and having someone, you might be able to get tutors, you get someone to help you to strengthen your skills in these courses before you get to college. Don't you agree? Okay, so let's move on. On reflection, which high school teachers best prepared you for your college experience? And what was it that this teacher or teachers did that were really unique and helpful? So I want you each to give just one or two things, and then I'm going to ask the college professors to talk about how do you recognize when someone is really well prepared in their first encounter. So, Susie, you want to start this time?
Sure. Immediately, the teacher from high school who comes to mind was my advanced placement government teacher, Mr. Consorti. If you're watching, thank you. Horrible when I was in high school, but very helpful now. He really stressed deadlines in the class. He took them incredibly seriously. There was no wiggle room with the deadline. A minute late could have been a week late, and the assignment wasn't accepted. And I found that has been a skill that's carried with me in college. So I've never really in my mind thought that turning something in late was an option, and that's been a benefit.
Great.
So much
That's
so.
great.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I don't have a specific teacher in mind, but a couple of skills that I picked up from my teachers was one, like the importance of when you're not naturally good at something or when something is hard, it's learning how to kind of like get over that little hurdle and not feel like you have to give up because somebody else is getting the material faster than you. So my high school teachers did a really good job of like mentoring us when it came to the really hard stuff and like working through it step by step, even when I was probably not the first student in the class to get the stuff. And that worked out really well for me in college because I'm like, okay, even though I know I didn't get as good of a grade on this homework as I had wanted to, at least I have a set of skills that I can now look back at and say, I'm gonna try this again and get a better grade next time. So for me, it was more about like personal perseverance that they really taught me, and I feel like all the other stuff, like being able to solve a math problem or a physics problem or getting better at technical writings, like those are all skills that you can acquire, like that somebody can teach you. But like personal drive in not giving up on yourself is something that the earlier you start, the easier it just is, and that's what really carries you forward.
To the professors, how do you know when a student is well prepared?
I think you pick it up a lot in the questions that the students start to ask because they try to go a level deeper, or sometimes they realize that their neighbor isn't understanding what you're saying and is willing to ask that question for them. So you see that student really step forward, step up. You also see them when they ask questions about what we do and maybe the interest that we have. So.
Okay.
I think often it's the case that preparedness is secondary to curiosity. Because if the student has a sincere desire to know more, that's evident right away. And that can carry you even further than a good high school education.
So you're saying that that to the high school students is that high school is the 4 years, not just your senior year or your junior year, but all 4 years is intended to prepare you to be very good in college. And of course, if you succeed there, we hope that you will also succeed in your chosen career or in life. It's about good decision making, critical thinking, and sticking to things. Don't try to take the easy way out. Anybody have any comment or questions, extension on that before we move to the next question? Go ahead, Matt.
I'm Matthew Duncanson. I'm a senior at ESAMS, and my question was, for students and the professors, what's the best way to prepare for life after college, whether it be in grad school or entering into the workforce in one's respective field?
Oh, great question. Maybe the professors want to start with that one. How about another Matthew?
That's a tough one. I guess you have to be open to opportunities that might come your way. You've got to start thinking about what it is that you're interested in. I think it's important to also realize that when you will pick a particular major, doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be working in that particular field. So you can focus on an area, but if you have other interests, you can complement that major to make you take that next step. Having some idea of maybe where you would like to go is certainly very helpful. But that comes with time. I wouldn't put any pressure on yourself to know where you want to go in your first year after you graduate. Right? It's too soon.
When I work with students, I talk about their first transition into work life being an extension of their education. Mm-hmm. And if they're really looking at the opportunities that they have for career being learning opportunities, they tend to thrive because they're not focused on specific salaries or other limitations that might keep them from growing to a place that inevitably they're hoping to get. So really looking at your initial transition as an extension of learning opportunities is a nice way to frame it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Bryce, do you have a question? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and the other side of that, Matt, is, and there's a parental focus that says, what are you going to do 4 years later? And part of that is trying to say to them, I'm going to be educated, whatever that means, but maybe not getting a job. I think part of what we're saying to you here is that you need to go in and understand that there are some basics in a good educational program, and those basics might be becoming proficient in a lot of those technical areas. And if I were to say to you what you really want to do those first couple of years so that you have a chance to take advantage of opportunities that come along later, is to be very proficient in those things that we know are important. Do I speak well? Am I able to present myself well? Do I have any sense of context? Do I understand the culture and how I use the culture in the environment? Do I do as well as I can in the academics? So I'm saying to you, I think that's what I would say to you, because the truth of it is, many of you, and you know the statistics, you're going to change, at your age, you guys are probably going to change your careers half a dozen times. 40 years ago you went to school and you stayed with something. So I'd say to you, as long as you spend time with those basics, when the opportunities come, which is a combination of your interests and what you do well, you'll be in better shape.
Bryce, do you have a question?
My name is Bryce Corey, and I go to ESUMS, and I'm a senior. How do you deal with professors and students that have a bad attitude?
Okay, how do you deal with professors and students who have a bad attitude? That's a good question. Who wants to start?
I think in the classroom you have to deal right off the bat with it, because otherwise it'll take over the class. So it sets the stage for others. But you have to do it very respectfully. You are in a college setting, and therefore you're all adults and individuals that deserve respect. So I would say you have to do it with respect, but very carefully and very early on.
Mm-hmm. How would a student with a bad attitude affect you in college?
I would think it would be a distraction in the classroom.
Okay.
I would say that you can't really be responsible for other people's decisions or what they choose to do, but you are responsible for the things that you do and the way that you behave. And so I think that if you are the person who is leading and showing them respect and being the respectful person, other people, maybe not the individual you're trying to change, but other people in the classroom will pick up on that. And if there's enough of you, then I'm not saying, force over power, but kind of. People start picking up that, the majority of the class isn't behaving this way. So this is not an acceptable behavior in this atmosphere. So I think the important thing is that you represent yourself in a way that you want others to treat you. And I think that's the important part.
Okay, you're watching OneWorld's Education Agenda. Our agenda item this evening is preparing students for successful college and life experiences. I'm Nzinga Shani, and with me is Mark Parmeri, and we're facilitating this discussion that includes college professors and college students who are, one has already graduated, one is finishing school this week, and one is in our sophomore year at Yale. And with us in the studio are kids from several high schools, including New Haven Academy, ESUMS, which is the Engineering Science University Magnet School, Wilbur Cross, and Sound School. And we are delighted that you're joining us for this live broadcast. And we have questions from the students, and we're to facilitate time, we're asking those questions of the professors and the college people, and we're trying to move it along so we can cover as many questions as is possible. The next question we have is, what are the big things that change from high school to college? So I had a student in 2015, we did one of these forums, and several students said the biggest change for them was that in high school your teachers guide you and your counselors help you, and when you go to college you're sort of on your own. So what was the biggest thing for you, Susie? You went to West Haven High School and then you went to Yale. What was the biggest change?
Yeah, sort of along those lines. It was in part not really having teachers to prescribe assignments to you and tell you exactly what to do when. You're not really in school from, what was it, like 7:45 a.m. to 1:45 p.m. But what came along with that for me was the quality of my academic work and sort of the depth of what I was doing. So in high school, maybe for a final exam, you'd have a study guide and you would just study what was on the study guide and then pass the final exam. But this last semester, I just submitted my final paper on Friday, and the final paper topic was write a 3,500 word paper. And I was like, okay.
Look at her face. She says, yes,
So-
3,500 words. That's what she said.
Right. So in that, without having that guidance of a teacher with me all the time, it sort of forced me to look at what I was interested in and what I could stand to write 3,500 words about. So it's all about sort of directing not only your work ethic, but also your interest in what you want to produce while you're in school.
Well, Leah, you have a degree in biology, and you're now doing research at Yale. A degree in biology is a little different from political science, because you probably don't get an assignment to write a 3,000-word essay. But how did you make sure you succeeded and graduated early and now has a job?
Well, so part of how I did that was to just, I essentially had to teach myself, as well as, go over the lectures that my professors went. There's just certain topics that if I didn't understand, I would have to reread the material, ask the professors, and just that whole learning experience is what made me want to just keep asking questions, keep pursuing.
What was most challenging when you left high school and you went to Southern? And you're majoring in biology. What was most challenging for you to get as good a grade in college as you did in high school?
The course load is definitely more different. It depends on the classes you're taking, but some classes will just have more credits than others, and that would mean that you would have to put in more hours to those certain classes. And sometimes it's not even a class that you actually have an easy time with, but you just have to put in the work to actually see the results. But if you do your best, it'll work.
Okay. Both Matt and Maria, you're both science professors. When someone comes in from high school with straight A's and then they come to college and you see that they're struggling, what do you do? How do you help them to develop that work ethic in college that will help them to keep their grades up?
A lot of it is making sure that the students, if they're trying something and it isn't working, that they learn to try something different, right? If you're reading the book and the book isn't making sense, you got to try different problems, you got to use your resources. And urging the students to leverage the resources that are on campus, be it tutoring centers, being other students that are available, office hours are a great resource that are in place. So making sure that the students are taking advantage of that really makes a difference.
I agree with that perspective as well, but I guess also if you meet to speak with the student to find out how they are spending their time in particular as well, because it is a different environment. One maybe could offer advice, for example. As was said earlier, right, you'll have communities within your own classes and major. Are you working with your peers, for example? So there are certain suggestions that one can also offer to help change those.
I find this transition is very difficult for a lot of our nursing students in particular, because it's not enough to get the answer right anymore. It's about understanding what you're learning. And that's a high bar that you have to hold yourself to. in college. But I think that that is really an important nuance that you're focused on. Do I understand what is being presented? And if I don't, even though the class is moving on, I'm going to go back and restudy and reread. And I might even spend my holiday break with my lessons from that previous course because I want to understand this. I know it's going to matter when I take the next class. And that's, I think, very different than high school, where you might just be happy to be done and move on. You need to understand in college. It's very important.
Okay, we want to pick up the speed a little bit. Alexis, do you have a question?
Courses that I want to take that are rather in communication disorders or maybe even English are going to be rigorous, and I just want to know how can you what advice do you have to incoming freshmen to get past that and to adjust better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually everyone here on the panel will be wonderful in answering that, because all of these courses, the science and the English, they're all going to be challenging for different students. And it is important as a foundation that you have all of those tools. So I think that knowing yourself and knowing where your strengths are and then working on your weaknesses is probably the best advice, because it's really easy to work on the things we're good at, isn't it? But to challenge yourself, to work hard on the things that you find challenging, I think that's the key.
Okay, Valencia.
It's often stressed to us, I guess, as high school students, that professors are obligated to make your freshman transition smooth. So I guess I'm asking the professors, like, do you guys try to implement something in the classroom where it's a smoother transition? And to the students, did you see it in the classroom where professors were trying to make your transition a little bit smoother, if that makes sense?
Okay, so let's start with the professors. Audrey, you want to take that one?
I would say that I do not feel an obligation to give freshmen a smoother transition. In fact, in some ways, particularly when I teach English 112, which is Intro to College Writing, I see it as a sort of boot camp. And I see my role as actually being quite the opposite, to make sure that if I tell them to write an assignment that is 1,276 words with a parallel staple on the side and 1-inch margins and Times Roman and all of these rules, that's what I can do to make sure they're best prepared, and that not only that they're learning how to be critical thinkers, but that they're learning to understand that self-examination is the place at which your life experiences interact with the material that you're learning. And then you come up with this third thing that we call knowledge, right? So the way in which all things interact and how difficult and complicated and important that is, I want them to get that, but I also want them to do the hard work to understand what that means. So I would disagree with professors trying to create a smoother path, maybe a more compassionate path, but not an easier one.
Or I might add, there's a part of me that says somebody's paid that tuition, and we don't want you to leave too quickly, okay? But to your point, in all fairness, it's very important that there are some things that become very obvious, and the quality of expectations needs to be consistent. Some of you can remember back to your first year as freshmen in high school, okay? And we all know, especially those in New Haven, we did a survey a number of years ago, that the freshman teachers, the first marking period, okay, generally say we've got to teach them that they're now in high school, okay? And sometimes the students are at a disadvantage. But I think for somebody to say to you that we're going to give you a little bit of room is not treating you with respect, because you're coming in as a student. You are expecting them to give you that quality, and it's beholden on them to to meet those expectations that are appropriate to that subject area. It really is.
As a way to help you transition is to start a little slower than you might think. So I always counsel students, because physics majors have a tough path to follow in the combination of physics and math. I always advise it's better to go a little slower and do well than go fast and try to get out. So I would say heed those types of words, that advice, especially your first year where it's a transition. Don't expect the rigor to be reduced, but you have the opportunity to take your foot off the accelerator slightly, and you can make up time later if you like.
Dasuba?
My question is for the college students. I wanted to know, how do you deal with rejection from school?
After you apply to a college that you really want to go to and they turn you down, how do you deal? Well, I don't know if these are the people to ask.
I think I certainly have an answer prepared, sort of. So in my college admissions process, it worked out. I ended up at a really wonderful school that I really loved, but I did face rejection from many of my schools, and it was really concerning and really difficult to deal with, as all my friends were getting accepted to these schools, and I was just sort of sitting there not getting accepted to them. So I found that for me, the best way to deal with that was to be upfront about it. When it first started happening and my friends started getting into schools that I was not getting admitted to, I would lie and say, oh, I hadn't heard my result yet, or I didn't check my email, which they knew I must have done. But then later on, I just started sort of being upfront and saying, no, I wasn't admitted. And just that sort of act of being honest with myself and not being ashamed of something that was ultimately out of my control, I found to be really helpful.
But you got accepted to Yale, so I'm not sure. I understand it. Annie?
So when I was a senior, I really wanted to go to Wesleyan. I loved the school, and either that or Brown, and I got waitlisted at both schools. And it was really disappointing to me, but when I decided to do the honors college at Southern, I'm like, you know what, this is an accelerated program, and really what this means is I can spend the next 2 semesters really proving to Wesleyan and Brown when I reapply that I can get in. I ended up not reapplying because I really enjoyed my department, really enjoyed being there, but that was actually a motivation for me to want to try harder, because I'm just like, if I was good enough to get waitlisted, it means I'm really close. So all I have to do is go a little bit further. So.
Oh, thank you. You?
I wanted to know if you guys had any other advice aside from work ethic on how to deal with the rigors of science curriculum, things like that. Thank you.
Okay. Science curriculum.
I think that if you're coming in again, I'm sort of repeating myself here. Science curriculum, especially if you're in the health science profession, you're going to have a range of different classes you will have to take. Try not to stack them up too much. Include the other classes that you would have to take as requirements, right? General ed, for example. So that way, again, it gives you time to go through the sequence. Also, you have to be careful is that it might look daunting on paper, but there are prerequisites. So there are a lot of classes that you cannot take until you take the prerequisite class. So good advising will help you lay out that sort of schedule, for example.
Yeah, don't try to take classes out of order. And keep in mind that the material and content in one class matters in the next one, so carry that knowledge with you.
I would say do not avoid the courses that you're fearful of.
Yes.
Because many students will procrastinate and they will try to avoid classes that they find difficult, and they will stack up, and then they will have to take many of them in the same semester, and that usually doesn't go well. So really confront your demons from day one and do it as was suggested in small doses if possible, and spread it out.
Go ahead, Matt.
So you guys mentioned earlier that colleges look for what you can bring to the school, not necessarily what you can take from them. So what advice do you have, or I guess my question is, what's the best way to create something or an organization at a school that relates to something that you're really passionate about?
I did that as an undergrad. It concerned me that there were so many Black organizations on campus. and Black women's organizations on campus, and I felt that there needed to be an umbrella organization that had a representative from each. And there were maybe 8 or 9 Black women. So I formed that group. I think at the time I felt as though the skills that I was learning as a political science major at the time were playing in a great deal to my thinking about what organizational structures ought to look like and how they could be more egalitarian in just the Black community. And so there are ways to do that. And one of the great things about being at a university is if you are to go to student affairs and you actually tell them that you have an idea, 9 times out of 10, someone will sit down with you and work with you and help you to figure out how you can start your own club or organization of any kind, or direct you to an organization that exists that can best use your skills.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ariana Lopez from ESUMS. I'm a senior. What helps you with your work ethic or with procrastination or to help you stay motivated and passionate about a certain subject, even though it might be the most boring thing you've ever seen?
So why don't you guys start over here?
I've always found it fun to just have, I guess, a friendly rival in the class and just, see if, having a rival could motivate you just to keep going, to keep studying. But maybe you wouldn't want that. Maybe you want to have your own study group, and that's also fine. It's more convenient, more helpful to just have a bunch of people just, tackle problems together, study together. Hey, I don't get this. Could you explain it to me? Sure. And, vice versa. So it all works out.
So you find study groups helpful. Anything to add?
I had sort of something specific happen to me. So my second semester, I just finished my third semester now. My second semester, I felt like I left the year in May, and I looked back and I thought, what did I do this semester? And I couldn't really think of much. I was sort of in a situation where I wasn't feeling passionate about my classes, and more so I wasn't feeling passionate about my work. And I sort of sat on it the whole summer, like I need sort of a new direction so I can leave a class and feel like I actually put a lot of work into it. So I think some advice on that front is just focusing yourself and remembering why you're at the university with your goals in sight, both short and long term, so you don't leave a semester feeling like you wasted your time. And in the event that you do leave a semester feeling like you wasted your time, harnessing that energy and that sort of frustration and wasting the time into doing 10 times better and remaining on point and on focused for the next semester.
Okay, go ahead, ask your question.
I feel that the elephant in the room, so to speak, is actually paying for college. I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy to get in college, but it is quite easy to find a fit for you where you feel confident that you'll get in. So what outlets do you suggest to utilize in when it comes time for paying for college, whether it be loans, scholarships, or anything like that? Because that's something I feel that I'm most worried about, paying for college. I know a lot of people that go to college and then they have to pull out and go to a community college or something like that. Not saying that that's not okay, but I mean, when you have your mindset on going to a 4-year college, that can be a bit disappointing. It can be a bit of a disappointment. So if anyone has any advice,
okay,
I greatly appreciate it.
I'd like to try that only because I'm with an organization and we've given out about $80,000 a year to kids from New Haven and contiguous towns, and it always amazes me how much, how the lack of information from guidance counselors or from the school, and it drives us crazy. I would say to you, there are a lot of small scholarships and there are a lot of contacts out there. I can't tell you because I don't know the best way to attack it all, but I will tell you I met a young lady who just graduated from Albertus, and she was running 10, 11 types of small scholarships a semester.
In order to pay for her way.
Yeah, and I mean, they're there. But I would suggest to you that this time of the year, you start constantly looking. I know, for example, we've begun to send out our literature. We're on site, when we're off the air, I'll tell you about it. But I mean, the thing of it is, this is an area that I find it's going to be as good as how much help you can get yourself and people around you to give you some contacts.
Yes, and doing research.
And doing the research.
And if I can add something, it's not just before you get to college. Do it while you're in college. The number of scholarships out there for sophomores and juniors, and students don't apply because you think that it's not for you, that it's for an incoming freshman. No, there's stuff out there. So
Yeah.
make sure you keep looking for it.
Let me see somebody who wasn't. Okay, go ahead. Let me hear your question.
For the students, how do you guys study for the big midterms or the final exams?
You cry a little.
That's a great question.
Apple said you cry a little. No. So
what I figured out is, but there are only so many different ways you can ask the same question. So what I usually do is I go back to the homework and I like take out certain stuff and see if I can rework the problem with different sets of information. So like the question is asking for this particular thing, but what if on the exam my professor isn't asking for that anymore? He's asking for something else. So I think that like when you're able to look at a problem and see different ways of solving it, that becomes really helpful, because I feel like the difference between high school exams and college exams is high school you have a concept and that's it. Like that you have this problem, you do it, you figure out how to do it, and there's like a set standard in which you can approach the next problem, and it's like very similar variations. Whereas for a college, it's applying many different concepts together. So I think the more connections you can make, the better you're prepared for that.
I want to say one of the key things is that you don't let things slide. Don't try to make up everything the last week of school. You have to do it from day one. You have to pay attention. You have to do your assignments. You have to do your research so that you're accumulating knowledge and skills and information as you go, not just the last day and not just the last semester of school. I am glad that you are here. I hope you found this helpful. We are going to put this program will be on our YouTube channel. It is going to air on Comcast channel 26 and on Frontier channel 99. We're at OneWorld we will be able to get you a copy of the DVD afterwards. It is, we want to say thanks to Southern and UNH and to all these students who are here to help us. I want to thank all the volunteers who have worked with OneWorld and Citizens Television and North Haven TV who have helped us to produce these programs over the last 21 years. I hope that you found this experience beneficial, and I wish you the very best when you go off to college. And try and remember everything that you have learned here this evening. And I thank you, Matt and Maria and Alyssa, Audrey, and Sandra. Mark, thanks so much, and good night, everyone. represent Zingashani, and I'm the executive director for OneWorld Progressive Institute. We're a small community organization that's staffed by volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Mark Palmieri, who is the unofficial president of our board, but also someone who has been with me since 1996 when we started these programs, June 3rd, 1996. And I just want to tell you briefly why I'm doing this, because I was one of the state of Connecticut facilitators for Chef versus O'Neill. I don't know how many of you have heard of Chef. It was the school desegregation case, Connecticut's version of Brown versus the Board of Education. And after working in Region 6, which was 12 school districts, with Danbury being the only district with any minority students at all, after spending 2 years doing that, and being threatened, being told to go back to New Haven because they didn't want people like me destroying their nice school districts, I decided to start a discussion about education. And we at OneWorld say education is our middle name.